All right, y'all, what's up? We're back. So a few things, and I wanted to plug this source because I am still, continually doing more research and uncovering more truths when it comes to just how prominent, prevalent, and just how far back, many of our ancestors go, specifically those indigenous to the continent of North America or the United States, that particular country. And, it's important for me, and I mentioned in an earlier video, to really clarify, to make clear without confusion who it is that we are talking about, that I am talking about when I talk about foundational Black American and others in my community as well. And like I mentioned, the official FBA.com website does a really great job at answering that so that there is no confusion, on either side, your matrilineal, patrilineal lines, leading back to the system of enslavement, chattel slavery within this particular country qualifies you to be foundational Black American. And based on the data from a few decades ago, it was said that 1 in 3 foundational Black Americans have indigenous ancestry. With the advent of people becoming more aware and more interested in their own family origin and stories and doing their own ancestral research, obviously that window has dwindled in a sense. And so it's probably going to be true that nearly everyone who identifies as foundational Black American and truly is has some sort of indigenous ancestry here, especially because other scholars of that time, both Black and white scholars, have admitted for centuries that majority of the population here, the peopling of this land already, upon quote unquote whose ever discovery, has been darker complected, tawny complected people. And even through transatlantic slavery, again, a small percentage of those people coming directly to North America, just a few thousand, few 100,000, maybe. I'm still looking into those numbers and the data on that. Going through as like a pit stop, some areas in the Caribbean and Central America, not staying for very long, therefore not having any sort of ethnogenesis in those areas, and then making their way to North America. That small percentage, excuse me, not really being indicative of the amount of people that again would people this land for centuries. And so, yeah, this is a really great resource by William Katz. I think they also mentioned W.E.B. Du Bois in this as well, and his connection and lineage to natives on this land. It's so cool to see the pictures in this work. So cool. With majority of these natives, being in North America. And so the reason why it's important is because I shared that footage of the Seminoles, and I mentioned in a few other videos that there were thousands of tribes essentially and native communities that had dark complected, again, tawny complected people. And unfortunately, a lot of those people were reclassified as Negroes, many of them enslaved and excluded from a lot of the benefits that would have been provided to some of the lighter complected people of those same tribes, or, other tribes that were more red, excuse me, or lighter. And then eventually you get the advent of Europeans buying their way onto the different rolls for just a few dollars to call themselves Indian and to stake claim to a lot of the benefits that would be paid out. And it's just a mess. But this is a reality for a lot of the natives who, were Black or darkly complected. Excuse me. And so I mentioned in like a previous video, I don't know if it was the last one I recorded or the one before that, Woodson, Carter G. Woodson, the founder and creator of Black History or Negro History Week, that was soon turned into what I call Foundational Black American History Month, which again, our history being relegated to a month, impossible, but still awesome to have, that time to honor and celebrate and, really put at the forefront and center our contribution, which unfortunately has since kind of been co-opted to include, and that's always the case when it comes to our people, and it's so unfortunate, but to include and make way for, again, many skin folk who aren't kinfolk, and really take away from what this whole thing was actually established for. And so, he was one of the pioneers in researching that complex and often understudied relationship between foundational Black Americans and Native Americans. And a lot of the productions and series or, movies that are out there, they always kind of frame it as like red natives were responsible for, being some sort of safe haven for those escaping such a brutal institution. When in reality, a lot of those communities were dark complected, tawny hued people. So even in that, it's inaccurate, and it's sad and it's unfortunate, but it is what it is. But yeah, and so, I really appreciate having learned about that, because as a part of my student organization, a part of the application process is, this request that if you're going to participate, you have to read this work. It's less than 300 pages. And I have a copy of this downloaded somewhere, and I've read through most of it, but I cannot find that. So I tried to find it on Internet Archives. It is not available to borrow. Thankfully, my school allows me access. But I want to like go into this and start reading through this. And here's the thing I've also come to understand. It really may not be the Most High's will for me to establish this student organization at this particular university. Like, they really just may not get the privilege of me creating something like this with their support, because there has been a lot of changes with our leadership. And at the end of the day, and like I said in another video, so much has changed since I originally went to school when I was 18 at OU for computer science. So much has changed in regards to the student population in a lot of these places. It's majority immigrants, and of course, those in the dominant society. And of those who would be considered Black or African American in that category, majority are continental African or first generation American. And so very few identify as or have ties to any sort of ancestry on this land. And so it's just kind of like, I don't know. I don't know. For the last 3 semesters, I have been the only foundational Black American student in my courses. I'm a full-time student. I usually take about 16, 17 credit hours each semester. And it's been a lot. And when I'm on campus in between courses, when it's super crowded and everybody's out trying to get to where they need to go to, and I look around, I rarely see campo. You know what I'm saying? Rarely. And I feel like a fish out of water. I feel so out of place. I'm just like, jeez, this is a lot. And of course, not reflected in my professors. And many of those who are over the African American, what is it? It's Afro, some universities, it's like Afro-American, African-American, or Africana, or whatever. They try to make a bit of a distinction, but rarely does that ever come through or translate in the curriculum. A lot of those professors, again, are also first, second generation, immigrants or American. Or they're foreigners. Like, they completely are of a different ethnic group than what the actual field is studying. So it's just like, and it's crazy because when you look at the Korean studies or the Japanese studies or all the things, it's all Japanese people. It's all Korean people, like Hispanic, whatever, like it's Hispanic folk, and it's just like, wow. Our system of study, though, our programs, which are very few, we can't even be reflected from the professor on down. And it really just, it gets to a point where it's just like, I need to go to an HBCU because, woo, this is insane. Quite crazy. But anyway, y'all, I said all that to say that I want to read through this and start breaking some of these things down. Yeah, because I think that this is a really profound work and something we should all be required to read within our community. I really believe that. But yeah, y'all, I did not know that he was, a pioneer in that research. Yeah, so amazing. So amazing. Super cool to see. But yeah, check this out. That's who it was. Langston Hughes. Sorry, not W.E.B. Du Bois. Although Du Bois might too. Who knows, But yeah, it was Langston Hughes though. Yeah, very, very interesting. And I'm telling y'all, something in my spirit just tells me, because the more that I'm looking into history, the more I'm realizing that the institution of slavery and what that experience was like for people in the Caribbean, what have you, South America, and even Central America was so different in some ways, but really very different than those in North America, those brought directly to North America. And I believe there's a purpose for that. I do. I believe there is a reason for that. And there's like manifold reasons for it. But the one that I'm particularly interested in is, again, in efforts to prove my theory that, prove or disprove, but that those few who probably would have been prisoners of war on the continent of Africa, sold to the Europeans, thus, then brought over, were descendants of Shem, particularly Judah, brought over here. Yeah. And not to get too deep, again, I'm still studying all this stuff, but I think that prior to transatlantic slave trade in times, there was probably a level of exchange or movement with many of the descendants of Judah to the Americas, specifically North America, before any sort of system of slavery or coloniality took place on the continent. And that's, again, going back to the ancient history of America, which is by, I believe, George Jones or someone like that. I got to go back and find the cover of that source, who talks about them being from Shem, from the Hebrew race, and goes into their customs, which are kind of indicative of what we saw even in the little bit of footage that we were able to see with the Seminoles. These were his comments post-Columbus, but he was referencing different Indian chiefs and works of people that came before Columbus. So he was almost like correcting Columbus, basically. So yeah, y'all. I don't know. It get deep. And again, these are just my assertions. These are claims, propositions, right, that I'm looking to prove. That I'm looking in some way to prove to be valid and sound, cogent at the least, and invalid Meaning, some of the premises that I may present in this argument will be true, where the conclusion drawn may not necessarily be so. So again, there's some truth to whatever. But ultimately, I think I'm on to something. And why is this significant to the work that I do? Well, being that medical anthropology, ethnobotany are some of the fields that I study. I didn't realize I was like studying 4 different fields. I was crazy. It directly relates to, again, plants and human conflict and our true contribution, which is what this channel is focused on. Especially, more specifically, those descendants and people through an ethnogenesis who would become foundational Black American, the contribution of the systems that would result. And even earlier than this, being founded based off of the knowledge of these people. So yeah, it matters. It's important. It really is. But anyway, if you guys find this interesting, leave a comment below. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share. If you have any recommendations of sources that would, help my studies and point me in the right direction, leave a comment below. Let me know. And yeah, thank y'all for tuning in. I'm gonna delve into some of this stuff, and then I really got to get back to that first source about the slave medicine and finish reading through that. And then I want to continue the plants and human conflict. Honestly, concurrently, we might be reading 5 or 6 different resources, y'all, at the same time. It's okay. Just stick with me. For those who care to, we're gonna be all right. We're gonna get through these. We are, I promise. Yeah. But anyway, thank y'all for tuning in. Y'all be blessed.